because I see folks are rolling in pretty quickly. Okay, well, it's 9:01 and I think I see the majority of folks are here or being admitted as we speak. So I'll call to order this meeting of the Higher Education Coordinating Commission Sexual Misconduct Survey Council. Morning, everyone. And I'm going to hand it to Kevin to do our roll call and see if we have quorum.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just going to wait just a sec here. There, people keep popping up into the lobby.
Excuse my dog letting himself in and out. That'll happen throughout the meeting. Sorry.
I think dogs, cats, and any other pets that can saunter past the camera are a welcome addition to this council. So everyone, please show me your dogs.
All right, I'll go ahead and call roll. Just alphabetical by last name. Just verbally say hi and mark you as present. Carly Anglin.
Hello, I'm here.
You. Caroline Bartlett.
Hi.
Lindsay Beeman.
Hello.
Jenna Cohen. Ethan Downs. Andrew Eccles.
Good morning.
Senator Sarah Gelser-Blowen.
The senator can't attend today, but staff is here on her behalf.
Thank you. Katie Green. Representative Vanessa Hartman. Demi Howard.
Here.
Tiffany Hyde. Belle Lee.
Here.
Grace Bengali. Representative Kevin Mannix.
Good morning, here.
Juliana Pedone.
Here, thank you.
Adea Powell. Rudy-Ann Rivera Lindstrom.
Here, good morning.
There we go. Carly Roner.
Here, good morning.
Serena Saturn.
She's at a conference.
Oh, okay, thank you. Tina's here. Justin Smith.
Here.
Senator Kim Thatcher. Jennifer Wilson.
I am here.
Okay. Martina, it looks like we have a quorum.
Yeah, well, thank you everyone for being here so early. I mean, I don't know, it's 9, it's not that early. But given that quorum is met, we only have 2 little bits of business before we can jump in. So the first is agenda review. Any changes requested to the agenda? Okay, seeing none, moving on. So we also have our consent agenda. So typically with the consent agenda, we would ask if anyone wants to pull an item for individual consideration. There's only 1 item on the consent agenda this month. So as long as there's no objection, we can just move forward. And that would be to approve the June minutes. So any objections moving forward? Okay, seeing none. We approved our June minutes. Okay, so we have a couple things to cover. Rowan said at the very beginning, before most folks were in, that these first couple items we have should be pretty quick, and then we'll be able to spend the bulk of our time talking about our subcommittees, and then, I don't know, maybe we'll even get to end a couple minutes early, who's to say? So I'll just turn it right over to Kevin to talk about self-attestation forms.
Thank you. Yeah, just a reminder, I sent everyone an email a couple weeks ago, said attestation form for board compensation. Basically, if you're not in public service and make below a certain amount a year, the state will compensate you for your time on the commission. So thank you to everyone who has returned that form already. Even if you don't qualify, and you pretty obviously know you don't qualify, which is probably the majority of people here being employed at public service, I will still need that form in the end. So just know I'll send reminders and haunt your inbox until you do so. So just warning you about that. But if there's any questions about just the compensation in general, I'm happy to answer those now. Idea? Oh, you're muted.
Is that from, can you hear me now?
I can hear you now, yes.
Okay. Is that from this time forward, or does it cover the prior meetings, all of the meetings that we've had, or for future meetings?
Yeah, it'll cover future meetings. My understanding right now is that it can be backdated and will cover the meetings that people have had gone to previously earlier this year. That's not 100%. It's gone back and forth a couple of times since I've come on. So that's where it stands right now, is that folks would be able to be compensated for the prior meetings. Juliana?
Yeah, I was gonna ask, if I'm interning in a public service position, does that still disqualify me for receiving compensation, or because I'm making below a certain benchmark of funds, am I still eligible?
It should be, you should still be eligible. It's for like full-time public service employment. So if like you're just doing like a part-time or internship or something, that doesn't count. That won't count against you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, and if any questions come up later, just feel free to email me, and I'm happy to discuss. But otherwise, I will turn it over to Rowan.
Oh, Rowan, you're on mute.
Good, because I wasn't really saying anything important. So I've been asked to kind of give a little bit of an update on what's going on with Title IX, and especially if it might have any ramifications for us. Many of you have already been affected by some of the tumult that's been happening, so you may have some really good information. After I'm done kind of bringing us up to where I know about, Carly's going to be able to, Carly Roner is going to be able to provide us a little bit more update about some of the stuff that's been happening this week. As usual, Title IX is very dynamic and changing really quickly. This summer, all of the institutions of higher education have had staff really busily trying to comply with a new final rule that came out from the Biden administration's Department of Education that changed the way that Title IX is to be implemented. Those administrative rules contained some provisions that some folks in the country found objectionable. And so they filed with the courts to seek relief from being required to implement the new administrative changes. None of this affects an institution's obligation to comply with Oregon law, but it may affect their ability to do so. And I'll kind of explain that as well. In the past, there have been some challenges for organizations that have been trying to comply with both state and federal law. During the Trump administration, some of the changes that were made by that Department of Education were counteracted by some Oregon legislation. So we had a situation where we actually have two definitions of sexual harassment that the institutions are required to comply with that are not the same. So you have to have one policy for state, one policy for federal. Things have gotten a lot more complicated since the court challenges to the new final rule. The legislation, the new regulations have been blocked in at least 11 states, probably more as of this morning. And a couple of weeks ago, a Kansas court issued an order that created an injunction that forbade all institutions from implementing the Title IX changes if they had even one student who was a member of one of three organizations, the Young America's Foundation, Female Athletes United, or Moms for Liberty. So if an institution has even one student who's a member of any of those organizations, they are not allowed to implement the new Title IX regs. Everybody else still is required to implement them. So, you can see how this is really dynamic, right? Right now, I know, for example, University of Portland and I believe PSU have been impacted by this. They're not allowed to implement the new changes. A college that currently is required to implement the new changes could be stopped from doing so if one of their students announces, hey, I've joined this organization, you need to not implement that. So I would love to buy all of the Title IX coordinators here a beer because you guys need it, or a massage or something. It's been a rough month for you all. And the timing that's really close to the beginning of the fall semester makes this even more challenging because this is when most of the institutions are going to be doing their prevention education. There's another Oregon law that requires that they provide written information on sexual misconduct and the resources available and what sexual harassment means. That's all you basically are going to have two versions of that to have one on hold to put forward at the very last minute. So it's going to be pretty confusing. I'm really hoping, and I'm sure everybody else is too, that these issues get resolved quickly. But I think it just, I still believe that somewhere in here there is a PhD thesis on Title IX and its attempt to socially engineer a whole bunch of changes. And I really hope somebody writes that because I really want to read it. So Carly, and I'm going to put everything I just said basically in the chat in case you're interested.
That's such a great recap, Rowan. Thank you for that. I was like, that such a lively way to recap something that is, I know for so many of you, so incredibly frustrating. And so I just want to echo Rowan in that, especially our folks in Title IX and prevention that are working to implement some of these changes. We know you've all been working so diligently on such a short time frame too. That was one of the challenges about this new Title IX rule was that it was released in the spring and then said, you're going to implement in August, and then in July, like, nope, just joking. We actually have some changes. So just want to offer a lot of sympathy, empathy for folks here that are having to navigate that. If you're not as familiar with where the Title IX regulations are, kind of what are some of the things that are included in the 2024 regulations, I'm dropping a link here in the chat. This is from the federal government, so the Department and Office for Civil Rights, the Department of Education, and you'll notice at the top they've actually included a little bright red section of text that talks about the court injunction that Rowan referenced. So I'll pop that in here. Currently, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We have 8 schools here in Oregon that are impacted by that injunction. And so I also want to offer, and I'll pop my email here in the chat, that if folks are navigating that, I'm very happy at my office to help support how we doing that and that implementation. The biggest update from this week that I wanted to share with folks is that the Biden administration has challenged at the Supreme Court level both of these lower court findings. And so there were 2, Rowan referenced the one here in Kansas. You'll see me looking at notes here too. I'm trying to make sure I'm keeping this right. And there was also one in Tennessee, and that was a full injunction, or tried to be a full injunction for the Title IX rule. So while the one in Kansas said there's one part here primarily around gender identity that we want to make sure folks do not have the ability to implement, the one Cardona versus Tennessee is going to be addressing a Tennessee ruling that said that you can't implement anything from the Title IX rule where we're not happy with all of it. So that primarily affected Tennessee, Indiana, Kentucky, Ohio, Virginia, and West Virginia. But what it looks like in those filings from the Biden administration is that they're asking for at least a temporary set aside so that schools who have been impacted by this injunction, including the 8 here in Oregon, have the ability to implement the Title IX rule and set aside only this piece around gender identity specifically, so that they could still implement everything else, proceed with your plan, but have this little part that they wouldn't be able to. So I'm happy, Rowan, too, to create updates as they come in for folks and answer any questions folks might have. I know that this is all very like kind of heady stuff. So Rowan, let me know if I missed anything.
I see Carolyn. Did you? Yeah.
Yeah, I just had one follow-up question. I'm on our operating procedures development committee, and one thing is for our Title IX policies, and one thing we were talking about regarding the student affiliated groups. I'm from PCC, so far we're good. But one of the discussions was, and I was hoping you all might have some input around, is if a school has a student that after August 1 becomes affiliated or raises their hand after August 1 says, I'm affiliated with this group, will the school then still have to pause after August 1 the implementation of their operating procedures? And that could happen at any point. It sounds like I'm seeing nodding heads. So sounds like if a student joins later on, that will still interrupt even after we've fully implemented our operating procedures.
So I'm nodding because that would be kind of how I would read things. I am not an attorney. This is not legal advice. Talk to your counsel. But this is such a dynamic situation, Caroline, that just my recommendation would be get some popcorn and kind of see what's going, watch for a few weeks to see what happens. But yeah, that's certainly a possibility. And I think that's one of the things that schools are finding the most challenging, knowing that, just takes one student to go, oh, actually, I want to join one of those organizations, and it throws a spanner in everybody's works.
I have a quick question I was going to put in the chat, but since it's quiet, I thought I had read somewhere that Monday there was like a deadline for the organizations for them to recruit new people, and so that's why all of this got posted, I think, on later on Monday or Tuesday, because that was after. So I read that as new students can't join for this, like that was the deadline for them to join, so it's kind of set for this next year. But are you all saying that at any time people could join, so that could change?
Rowan, I'm happy to pop into, let me know. Yeah, Carly, I think that's great. If you have that and want to pop it in the chat, I'll say part of that piece about it being dynamic is that we are trying really hard to capture all these pieces when they're happening at different courts across the country. Rowan and I are not lawyers, and so I know for me, Rowan, I'll say specifically, it's hard to track some of those pieces.
Yeah.
And so many of you are affiliated with organizations that are doing great like webinars and things about this. And so as you have those, please, like if you have additional information, I would welcome. Rowan, you let me know, but I would encourage folks to chat, drop it here in the chat too, so we can have that.
Yeah, I'll see if I can find it again.
I wonder, Carly, if I know that the Sexual Assault Task Force does a really good job of kind of keeping abreast of all of this stuff. And I wonder if you are, do you have any kind of a blog or any kind of social media where you're sort of updating so that people would have one place that they could go to look for updates that affect Oregon schools at least?
Yeah, we are starting a blog post on our website for folks. And so if anybody's interested, if you want to message me here, I'm happy to send you that link when it's available, or I can just share it to Rowan so that by our next meeting, folks have that link.
Juliana, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, so just to clarify, these rulings are affecting, so I go to University of Portland, so these are affecting the institution's ability to enforce Biden's, what he laid out in the 2024 Title IX proclamation? Okay. Just sorry, I'm student journalism, I'm news and managing, so this is kind of big. So yeah, I just wanted to keep my people in the loop. Thank you.
Yes, and I'm happy to pop some news articles. I know some other folks had them here in the chat that were really good. So we can pop some others as well.
Thank you so much. I'd really appreciate that.
Representative Mannix?
Thank you. I realize I'm a non-voting member. At the same time, I do think, just a thought here, I would think that what is happening with the litigation should not bind this council from going forward with the development of its plans and the proposed survey. It may affect how some questions are posed as they come forward, and we can take a look at that. But I do think the mission should be maintained, and it's important for us to be aware of other issues that are out there relating to Title IX. But we're focusing here on a survey as to sexual misconduct, and we want to make sure that that mission moves forward with the committees that have been established. So I'd encourage that, at the same time being sensitive to the issues that are bubbling out there in regard to Title IX.
Definitely, I absolutely agree with you. I think one thing for us just to keep in mind as we move forward, especially as we start doing outreach and we start talking about implementation, I think it's important for us to recognize that there are a lot of different moving parts. Ours is one, it's really significant. Like I said, I don't believe there's anything in the Title IX regs that affects the Oregon law or the requirements that the institutions have to comply with it. But I think just being aware that that this is all going on is really important. So thank you. Go ahead, sir.
All right, I was waiting to be called upon, but the think of us as a convoy, many ships that want to move in the same direction, but other ships all have their own crews and machinery. And as to our role, I think we need to do all we can to make sure that our ship is moving forward effectively, so that we can carry out our mission. And so the environment we're in is important. What's going on elsewhere is important. But the whole point of setting up this council, from my understanding of what was going on legislatively, was that different institutions reacted differently to the idea of conducting a sexual misconduct survey. And we wanted to make sure that there was a coming together of folks to develop something which was on common ground, that each institution felt comfortable proceeding with a sexual misconduct survey to give us information about what we ought to be doing in terms of public policy to address these issues. Some of it legislative, some of it regulatory, a lot of it institutionally. So we'd understand, and our institutions may have different ways of implementing things, but we want to have a sense across the board of what is happening at our institutions. And there was some sensitivity as to different institutions have different ways of approaching this. Is there a way of coming up with one sexual misconduct survey which can inform everyone as we try to address these issues? And I do think that's an important mission, so that we can keep all of our institutions of higher education on the same page, so to speak, about this topic. And I know Representative Hartman was very committed to moving forward on this. So I just want to encourage this council to continue working as smoothly as possible to have those committees get their work done. And if there's any need for legislation to implement this, to move forward, we ought to think, really, December is the last time you really want to be putting together legislation for the next session, which starts in January. So I stand here as a friendly force, just wanting to be helpful, but I wanted to throw those things out to encourage folks to continue to move forward with the committees. And then I'm going to take down my chat hand or my speaking hand.
Okay, any final questions for Carly or Rowan about Title IX? Not seeing any. Thank you all so much. Those are wonderful articles in the chat and really helpful information. Okay, so our next item agenda, I'll pass it back again to Rowan, and they're going to share some information about a meeting with representatives from other EDC states.
Right. So Every Voice Coalition has done a really amazing job of getting legislation passed in several other states. And there are a group of colleagues that Kevin and I have been meeting with for a few months who have positions analogous to ours, where they're kind of overseeing some of the implementation of the laws that were developed. They have, several of them have formed similar councils or commissions. A couple of them have already implemented their surveys. And we thought that it might be helpful for our council to hear from folks who've had experience doing this work already, so that you can ask any questions about any pitfalls, or they can kind of share some of the information learned. A couple of folks, Amanda and Kitty, I'm sorry, I'm blanking on where Amanda's from, maybe Kevin remembers. Kitty's New Hampshire. Massachusetts, thank you. Are going to be able to meet with us from noon to 1 on the 9th, Friday afternoon. That's a Friday afternoon on August 9th. If you're not able to make that meeting, I'd really appreciate, and they would like to, if you have any questions about how these kinds of laws have been implemented in other places, or any challenges that you can kind of foresee, that you want to know, how did this come up and how did you handle that? If you want to send me those questions, I will share them with them in advance. We are planning on recording the session so that we can share that link with you. This is a training, so it's not a public meeting. It's considered a training, so there won't be a public invite. There won't be the kind of noticing and stuff like that, but we can share the link of the recording internally with the council. So if you can't make it, you can still learn something from, hopefully learn something from what they have to share. Later, as we start getting closer to implementation, there are folks from another organization, PIRC, which is Prevention Innovation Resource Council. They actually sit on one of the councils back east, and they are also academics at a university that does prevention work around sexual violence and domestic abuse. And they have offered to share information about some of the implementation challenges that have come up. So we thought that would be a useful panel maybe later this fall as we start thinking more about what implementation would look like for us.
Thank you. Does anyone have questions for Rowan about that?
I just want to mention I'm going to go ahead and send the meeting invite to everyone today. So yeah, get a meeting invite from me. This is what that is about.
Excellent. Thank you both. Okay, so we'll move on to our final main item on our agenda, which is to talk through the subcommittees. So we've discussed as co-chairs that, given that a fairly substantial amount of the work that we've talked about doing in this council is going to be happening in these subcommittees or is going to be driven by these subcommittees, we really wanted to make sure that expectations and roles were clear and that we all as a group had a chance to talk through some of those procedural pieces in case there were questions or concerns or anything like that. So I'll just walk through some of this, and Kevin has also included the list of everyone's subcommittee and some other really helpful sort of instructional or outline pieces onto Basecamp. So if you haven't looked at those, please feel free to jump on and look at those. If anybody's having a difficult time with Basecamp, also please let us know because that is where a lot of these materials are going, and it's very useful. Okay, so to talk things through. So now that you are all in your groups, if you have any questions about the group you're in, or if you're concerned about the group that you're in, I think we were able to get everyone into the group that they wanted to be in. So hopefully everyone's happy about that. But the next step is groups need to set up their first meetings. And there's a couple of things that we're hoping will happen at those meetings. So first of all, to just say that Kevin and Rowan are our admin support. And so you can expect them to reach out to each subcommittee in the next couple of days in order to schedule those meetings. Unlike the training that we're talking about in August, each of these subcommittee meetings is also subject to public meetings law. And that means that there are strict timelines for when things have to be noticed. So thankfully, we have Kevin and Rowan to help us keep abreast of all of that. And they're going to do the logistics for us. So look out for those emails so that they can help keep us in compliance. So at this first meeting, each subcommittee should select a member or maybe members to be chair or co-chairs. This can help make sure that we have, clarity of tasks, and really just so that each subcommittee has a sort of central point person who the main co-chairs can reach out to and who can sort of be responsible for coordinating that. One of our subcommittees is quite a lot larger than the other two, so perhaps there will be multiple co-chairs for one and just one chair for others. Whatever works best for each subcommittee, it's up to you. But we're hoping that within that, the chair can kind of help ensure that each subcommittee follows the sort of expectations. And Kevin made us a really helpful expectations for council committees document. So that is also on Basecamp, like I mentioned, but just to go through those responsibilities quickly. So for the committee chair or chairs, the responsibility will be to ensure that the committee meets regularly, whatever regularly means for that subcommittee. And to lead the committee in setting up and carrying out the work plan that sort of fits the overall council's timeline. Again, that's going to be something that each subcommittee determines and that will probably change and grow as our understanding of this work changes and grows. You might ultimately decide that there'll be subgroups within subgroups, right? And that, again, can also change and grow. You might decide as a subcommittee that individual or particular tasks are going to be assigned to particular members. And you might want to refer to the survey timeline document that was included in last month's meeting packet, just to kind of get a sense of what might be expected and how you might want to start building out that workflow for your subcommittee. Committee chairs will also be responsible for liaising with one another and with us, the main committee co-chairs, in order to share whatever information is necessary to do their work. And pretty importantly, the chair or whomever volunteers, whomever they designate, will report on the committee's process at full council meetings. So in future, we'll have a standing agenda item at all of our future meetings for subcommittee updates so that the chair or chairs or designee, whomever from each subcommittee can share with the whole group what their progress is. The committee chair, again, or their designee, are also invited to come to our co-chair meetings, which we're having 11 a.m. on the Wednesday of the week before the main council meeting. We tried to do a like every third Wednesday sort of a situation, but sometimes the calendar just doesn't line up like that. And the third Wednesday is the day before this meeting. And again, because things need to be noticed in a timely manner, we're meeting the 11 a.m. the Wednesday of the week before. And those meetings are where we set the agenda for these main meetings. So particularly helpful if co-chairs or chairs of subcommittees want to attend those meetings and help us figure out what should be on the agenda. We're not going to know necessarily what's going on in specific in each of those subcommittees. So unless you tell us, we're not necessarily going to know what to put on the agenda. So that would be really wonderful for folks to come. You can just reach out to any of the co-chairs or honestly Rowan or Kevin to get invited to those meetings if that's something that the committee wants to do. Final sort of tasks of the chairs: communicate with us co-chairs if necessary to resolve any challenges, and then communicate with your wonderful support staff, Rowan and Kevin, as needed. Any questions about some of those expectations about chairs or co-chairs of those subcommittees? Okay, not seeing any. So back to the sort of next steps. So as you're deciding your schedule, like whether that's monthly recurring meetings or ad hoc meetings, and as you're calendaring those meetings, think again about public meetings law and the fact that there may be multiple people, many people on your subcommittees who all have like pretty wacky schedules. So it may be ideal to set a recurring meeting in advance, even if that ends up changing, or if you decide that you don't need to meet for a particular month. If that's set in advance, I think that's quite a lot easier for ensuring that we have things noticed correctly. And like we said, it's up to committees to decide what regularly means, particularly given that there might be different workflows at different times of this process, right? Different subcommittees are going to be working at different moments, and then we'll all come back together to work. And then you get to get going, right? You get to get started on the actual work of this council. So that is sort of our outline of expectations around the subcommittees. Does anybody have any questions, thoughts, feelings, things that they want to bring forward to the whole group about what that might look like? Concerns anybody has?
Are we going to go into breakout sessions soon or today?
I don't think we had planned to go into breakout sessions with our subcommittees.
Okay.
Yeah, and actually, Kevin, I'm not sure you may know this. With the main council meetings, are we allowed to go into breakouts of separate subcommittees during our main meetings, or would that disrupt public meetings law?
Honestly, I will have to get back to you on that. I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure how to track what's happening in different breakout rooms. So I'm not sure if that will work or not.
Yeah, you can only record one room at a time, I think. So you wouldn't be able to have multiple recordings for the same thing. Sorry, I do all of my Title IX hearings in here, so this is how I know.
That's very helpful.
Cool. Thank you,
Thank
Jennifer.
you.
Yeah, that's helpful.
Okay. I guess I wanted to, because I'm going to be on the survey committee, and I volunteered to either chair or be the co-chair of that, since I'm already working very much closely with Rowan, and we kind of already have a kind of outline of how we're going to save people time. So, but I would need someone's help in doing that as well. So I was wondering how we would nominate a co-chair, or just, I guess we could just ask for volunteers now for those who are on the survey committee, if they want to volunteer to either chair or co-chair, or we can have two co-chairs. I don't care about the title, really.
Could I suggest that you
go ahead,
do that in the first committee meeting? And that way you'll have everybody there. And that way, yeah. And you can decide, you can set up the work, you can organize yourselves any way you want to. There's no rules about that. So, yeah.
Yes, there isn't. Okay, then. Thank you very much, Ryan. Okay.
Does anybody else have any other questions or want to talk through any of those expectations, or what's going to be going on in our subcommittee meetings, or even how we want folks to be reporting back to the main council? Okay, I'm not seeing many. In that case, that runs through our agenda. Rowan, you were right. We were so prompt. We may even get several minutes back in this hour, which is a thrill. Is there anything else for the good of the order that anyone wanted to bring forward?
Can't think
Okay.
of anything. Thank you, Rowan, for all your work. Thank you, Kevin.
Yeah. As always, I think maybe a standing agenda item is just our thanks and relief that we have Rowan and Kevin to do the real legwork of this council for us. Okay, well, seeing no other hands raised or faces waving frantically at their cameras at me, we can adjourn this meeting of the Sexual Misconduct Survey Council and see you all next month. And just remember to look in your inboxes for Kevin's scheduling invitations and those self-attestation. That's a really hard phrase to say. Self-attestation forms, so that he does not have to actually haunt your inboxes.
Thank you all.
See you all next month.
Bye.
Thanks, folks. Take care.
Thank you.
Right. Okay. Hey, Adea.
Hey, there's someone still here. The representative maybe
Yes,
stepped away.
Representative Bennett, yeah.
Okay. I